Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, the Sanhedrin daf Samach Tes. We are going to begin on Samach Tes Amud Aleph, the fourth line from the top. So we were introduced to the dinim of a ben Sor Mora, a wild and rebellious son, and we said that this is a child who is just becoming of age, typically between the ages of 13 and 3 months. And we had a source that said only the child can be a ben Sora, v'lo ben. But when it comes to his child, so that doesn't work. And we end up asking, that sounds therefore like a katan can give birth, which is what we were discussing as we concluded that a katan iyat tzarch lachsla b'yadu she'en lo goalim. If you have someone who is a katan, you don't have to look after to see if he has relatives, if let's say it's a ger, because there's no way a katan could have children. Esve, by ish, ainli el ish. I only know an ish. And Rashi says this is regarding a shivcha charufa, ish ki yishka ves ish shechvas zera. So when it comes to a shivcha kenainis who is designated, there's different opinions for an Eved Ivri. So the din is that if, let's say, she was already designated, and then you had bia with her, so then there's a din of all the din of a shivcha charufa apply. So it says that a man who lies down with her, ben teshan v'yamechad shiroi l'biyam nine. How do you know the dinim also apply to a 9-year-old? Talmud loymer v'ish. So we see a 9-year-old. It is a bia, meaning he has zera, and therefore he could father a child. So what does that mean? He has the ability, his bia is a shem bia, but that doesn't mean that he's actually able to produce zera to have a child. It's it's like grain that hasn't even grown a third. It says Rashi, if you would plant these seeds, it's not going to grow new grains. So over here says Rashi, why does it say that language of v'chi yazid? Ish mezid umazria. That when it comes to a man, his zera will be cooked, so to speak, and be able to therefore produce children. In katan mezid umazria. So this is again saying that a katan cannot produce seed to be able to have a child. Amalei Rav Mordechai Rabashi, my mashmanahai mizid lishin the b'shuli. How do we know that language is a language of cooking? That said, Yozid Yaakov knows it, that he cooked these lentils, and he uses a similar language of nozid, mezid, abahatana be'mishmuel ben v'loy av keichadami. According to Rabbi Shmuel, he says ben v'loy av. Regarding a ben Sar Moira, it says only your son. It can be a ben Sar, but not the father. Says Rashi, Ben, we're excluding someone who already gave birth to a kid. That he, even though he may be within the age range, let's say 13 years old, but even though he has a son, only his son could potentially be Ben Sar, but not you. Which means that, how's that possible? It must be that he gave birth before as a katan. Ilema diaver basar. If you want to tell me that he caused her to get pregnant before he produced these two hairs, and she only gave birth after he's shown signs of maturity, so how do we say that a ben Sar is that long? It's only a 3-month window. So it's impossible that he childed the woman. She got impregnated while he was a katan, and yet this woman she gave birth, and it was before he became a zaken. So what do you mean? That's not possible, because obviously with a 9-month pregnancy doesn't work. Says Rashi, hikav zaken. Once you produce 2 hairs, that's it. 3 months is the cutoff. So it's either you're able to produce the signs of further maturity, or 3 months, whichever happens first. So basically, this is a problem. So after 3 months, it is recognized. Fine, that's it. So Elolav, what must it be? The Yavra Mikmei Delaisi Shtei Saros. That again, she must have given birth. Not that she was pregnant after he was showed Shtei Saros, and then the woman gave birth, and yet he still hasn't shown signs of maturity. No, because that's less than a 3-month window, which is not possible. So it must be, rather, she gave birth, became pregnant before, while he was still a katan, which is a rye over here. Mikmei Delaisi Shtei Saros. V'el Mikmei Delak of Zokin, Mishmam and Katan Mailid. So the Kashan Rabbah, we must hold the Grav Chista. So, lo, Oilam, the Abed Baster, the Ice Shtei Saros. Really, no, Katan can't be Mailid, can't have kids. So what happened? She got pregnant only after he produced Shtei Saros. The Oilad Baster, the Yaakov Zokin. And the child was born after he produced signs of maturity. With the Kakasha, the Rabbi Kurus Padoi, Kios Ravdimi Omer Amrim Rava Ben Velo Haroi Likroso Av. It just means not someone who is fit to be called a father. That's all it's referring to. Says Rashi, V'adikam Rabbi Yishmuel Ben Velo Av Lo Kishi Yoldu Imo Kvar Lebnoi Kamamai. It's not talking about a situation where the mother already gave birth. The Balav Hachi Mifter Medin Ben Saramayra. He's going to be pater anyway. Oba Gimel Chadashim Oba Hakaf Zakin. So obviously he's going to be pater anyway. All it means, says Rashi V'Hachakamer, Ben, you can only have a son who's Ben Saramar, Bo Haroyal Yosav, not someone who is fit to become a father. Behind Liachar Gimel Chadashim, Ach Shehevi Cyrus, Shroyal Yosa Uber Nicker. Because after 3 months, after the first trimester, you can now see the woman being pregnant, that she's pregnant. Im Hoyaba Al Isha Mishahevi Shtei Cyrus Vimasaberis. So it means that she's actually it's not that she's actually pregnant, but after 3 months, it's recognized that the woman is pregnant, and he'll be called dad. So therefore, and it's only been 3 months, so to speak. That's the idea. So it's interesting. An interesting thought process, that when you consider to be a father? Is it only once the child's born, or maybe even when your wife is pregnant, you're basically a father at that time as well? So anyway, that's what it's saying. Gufa, maybe. Omarav Karus Padoi, Omarav Shavti, Kol Yomav Shel Ben Saramoyer, Enuel Gimel Chadashim Ovad. It's only 3 months. Avanan Tanan, Meshevish Day Cyrus, Yad Shiach Zakin, who's different shear. So Hikiv Zakin, Afla Deloy Mol Gimel Chadashim. Mol Gimel Chadashim, Afla Deloy Hikiv. Once he produces Shtei Saros, it's either 3 months at the most, or if after showing Shtei Saros it's Hikiv, Shiakiv Zakin, then it could be even less than 3 months. So whichever one happens first. Yosef Rabbi Yaakov ben Harper Koi Kamedu Ravina, it was said in front of Ravina, but Yosef Kaimer Mishmedu Rav Huna, Bird of Yeshua, Shema Minam, Mid Rabbi Kurus Padoi. We can learn from him, Rav Shabta, Yoledis L'Shiva, Ein Uber Nicker. That if a woman who gives birth, there's two possibilities. A woman who gives birth at 8 months is going to have a stillborn. At least how it was in the time of the Gemara. But if you had a woman would give birth potentially after 9 months, and sometimes a woman would produce a healthy child after 7 months. Now, within 9 months, so you have an Uber's Nicker, 1/3 of that, which is 3 months. So maybe you would say the same thing, that if a woman is only going to end up having a 7-month pregnancy, so it says, Yoledis l'shiva ein uber nicker l'shlish meha. It doesn't mean that it's going to be 1/3 of 7 months, but rather it'd still be 3 months. If it's true that a Uber could be nicker even 1/3 of, let's say, after 7 months, lumli gimel. So why do we mention 3 months? But betray utlasasagi, 2 1/3 months would be enough. So 2 1/3 months would be enough. So therefore, this is raya. As we just said, it says Rashi, Medelo karili royally kurasa ab ad gimel chadashim shmam nafil ishto haisi ledes l'shiva. Even if a woman only gives birth after 7 months, you won't be able to see her being pregnant until 3 months. Because if in fact she would be able to be shown as being pregnant after 2 1/3 months, nifter kol adam medin sarah mayra, then in fact you could be potter from being on ben sarah mayra, says Rashi, the royal likrosa av, because you're already fit to be called an av within 2 months, 2 1/3 months. But nafkamina, says Rashi, let's say you have a woman that didn't wait after 3 months after her marriage, but Nisei, since she got remarried, and she was pregnant. So saving minarishon, saving minacharain. So we say you're really supposed to wait 3 months, because what happens if you get pregnant? We don't know who the father is. Now, if we say there's a 3-month window. Now, im hooker uber lebeis chadashim shlish. Let's say a woman is able to get, it's recognizable because she gives us this woman is a 7th month pregnancy woman, so she only should have to do 2 1/3. 2 1/3 months times 3 is the 7 months, right? So when the sui hacharain vaday minarishain. So if it's been 2 1/3 months and she's not for this vaday minarishain, the feel he has see the leilid l'shiva. So again, it says im hooker ubra. If we can already see after 2 1/3 months, then you know she's pregnant from her first husband. The feel he has see the leilid l'shiva acharain lo hayaniku shlishemeha. So again, that's why it's perhaps interesting to note, again, as Rashi says, first the husband died, she didn't wait 3 months, and now after 2 1/3 months, she's clearly pregnant, must be from, it's from the first husband and not from the second husband. Okay, so apparently we don't hold of this notion of being able to be recognizable, even a woman who has a 7th month pregnancy after 2 1/3 months. So her answer is, zil basaruba. But actually, it's not true, but we just go basaroiv. So that's the idea over here. We go basaroiv, and therefore, even though it is true, but in this case, we're not going to rely on, maybe it's a 7-month pregnancy, because typically it's a 9-month pregnancy. So Amrika made the Rav Huna Berei Rabbi Yeshua Amrullah Din Nefashos Miazlin and Basaruba. Is it really true when it comes to Din Nefashos we go after the majority? But our Imra Vishatu Eda Vitzila Eda. We always try to go lenient to be able to save the person from being sentenced to death. Yam Zil Basaruba. And you say to go after the majority. So in Parshas Mishpatim we see Acher Ram Lahatais. L'chayra, again, as we said, maybe that is not by din nefashos. So why don't we say this by the boy? So ahadru committed ravina amalei v'din nefashos and basaruba. You tell me we don't go basaroi by din nefashos, but not echad oimer b'shnayim b'chadash b'chad oimer b'gimel edusan kiyamas. If one person says that the incident took place on the 2nd of the month, the other says the 3rd, it's still good. This one knows it was a 30-day mole month, and the other one doesn't, thinks it was a chasar 29-day month. But they're not really arguing in that country. It's not it's not really contradictory testimony. Now, if you tell me don't go basarov, name a hani davka kamasadi. Why should we just automatically assume that this guy doesn't know? Majority of people know the day of the calendar. They know what day is Rosh Chodesh. So therefore it should be considered Eidus Mecheshes. So why would we say that we would just rely on this? We should go basarov. Ella mishum diamridan zil basaruba. Baruba the inshi avdi the tobi ibor dercha. Because it's not true. The reason why is because people normally make this mistake. So we see that when it comes to din nefashos, we do go basaroiv. Okay. If a girl who's 3 years old is kadeshes babia, at that young age already she's kadeshes babia. V'im ba'leha yavam kana. If she was already married and her husband died and obviously they're childless, so she can do yibum with, and that would be a kinyan to the brother. And here's an important line. that there's an Isser of Eishes Ish with this 3-year-old. Matames Bo'aleha Latam Mishka Matachna Ke'elyoin. That she can be Matama, her husband, being a Nida with Tumas Tachtan Ke'elyoin. Nises a Kayin, if this girl's 3 marries a Kayin, Achelas B'Truma. Bo'alecha Min Absulin, if an apostle has been with her, apostle Min Kahuna, she goes apostle. Here's another important line. So if any hipoteris, obviously she's potter because she's a katana, but anyone who has been with her is going to be chayiv. Now, what do we see? If we look at this bottom Rashi, katani miya chayav l'him Hashem hish. It says you're going to be chayiv eishes ish with this 3-year-old because chayav and misa kaimer uvamezid. Must be talking about your chayiv misa. Now, what is this elyon taknak elyon? If you touch a nida, who's an avatoma, you become a rishon. But with bia, you also become an av. So anything under him becomes tameh, it becomes a rishon. In turn, it's matami oichlin umashkim. A girl, everything under her remains an avatoma, which is able to be matama on the bekalim. Anyway, so what do we again see? Katana miya yehi patura. As we continue the Samach Testament base. So, why do we say Take that this girl is that guy is going to be Chaim Ish? Why do we say that? Maybe this girl is an illness, and therefore, why is it Ish that you committed adultery? Maybe this girl is actually an illness, and therefore it was a Kedushi Tais, and we don't say it's Eishes Ish. So how could this man be chayiv misa for having tashmish with this girl when maybe there's a small chance that she's an illness and they're not really married? It's a raya that when it comes to din and fashis, we actually will say this din that we're not going to assume that she's an illness. No, because we go basar roiv when it comes to din and fashis. So lo, my chayiv carbon. It doesn't mean that we're going to kill him because maybe we won't do so because maybe we will not say we go basaruba, but Taka will say you can't kill him because she Taka can be an illness. But when it says you're chayiv, it just means you're chayiv a carbon because you did a b'shogeg, and therefore says Rashi b'shogeg d'azlin and basaruba. We're not going to kill the guy because of rove. Rove of these women are not an illness, so was Eishes Ish. No, we're not going to do that because there's a chance. So we don't, by Dini Nefashis, go us a rove. Mumsin al Yada Katani. It doesn't say B'shogeg Achatas. It talks about you're going to have him killed. Obviously, talking about B'mezid. That means B'boleha Aviyah. That's referring to a case, rather, where the father was boiler. It's not because she's married, because else Eishes Ish, maybe she's not an Eishes Ish. But even if she was an illness, the father still can't be boil her, not else Ishus, but because of his karoiv. It says that if anyone is boil her, any of the arayos, which implies even Eishes Ish, we're talking about a situation where the husband accepted anything. Says Rashi, timsa ionis chafetzu ba kedushin. So what's the whole problem? There's a small chance that maybe she's an illness, and therefore it's kedushay tais. The husband said, "I don't care. Even if it turns out that she's an illness, I still want to be married to her." So therefore, it's not do we maybe go basarov or not go basarov. This is a situation where the husband is makabel everything anyway. So therefore, in that situation, she's definitely married, and therefore we are talking about b'mezid. It's not because do we go basarov and have him killed or not because the majority of women are not illness. No. Maybe we don't go basarov, but over here is a situation where he actually said and stipulated, "I don't care." Question 13. How do we find that sometimes we go strict? Says Rashi, even though he's fit to be called a father, but trei chadashim is shlish, even at 2 1/3 months, because it could be hook or uber maybe if she's a 7-month pregnancy. Azlin and Basaruba, we go Basarov, the Latas Yoldan, that most will give birth after 9 months, will Mifter Bepachos Megim Chadashim, and he will not be potter under 3 months. But so therefore we're strict with regard to that. But Tanan Chiyagam the Echad Oimer B'Shnayim B'Chodesh Echad Oimer B'Gimel Edusin Kiyames. We say it's a good testimony. Yishim Deruba Vida Tetabi Bor Diercha. In that situation, most people can make this mistake. So therefore, we go Basarov to go strict by Din and Fashas. And that's how we see it. Because even though they have different testimonies, we don't throw them out. Rather, we say those are two good witnesses, and the person will be sentenced to death, even though they said different days. However, again, when it comes to Ben Sarah Meir, we go Basaruba Hachmir to say that even though it's true, it's possible that this child will be recognizable at 2 and a third months because she could be 7 months old. We go Basarov to say it was 9 months, and therefore he's not going to be pater b'pachas megimel chadashim. Okay. All right. Let's look at question. Well, let's hold off. Maybe have questions later on. Okay. Tanraban. Hamisoyleles, someone who's intimate with Bivna Katan, and we're talking about a small kid, knows he's intimate with his mother, V'araba, and he begins tashmish with her, V'shami Armin Pasim in Kahuna. That alone can passel this woman from Kahuna. It says Rashi Mesoles Lashon Pritzus. So even Tchilas Bia, as Rashi says, Ha'arazu Nishik Aviko Mandir Mizu Achnasa Satara. So she's considered to be, as Rashi says, Shavi La Zaina. She is considered a Zaina by this Tchilas Bia. Beis Hillel Machshirin. Beis Hillel disagree. And as we're going to see later on, that a katan is labar biahu, and therefore he can't passel her. Omer Rabbi Chibar Redu Rabba Bar Nachmeni Omer Rav Chisda V'Yarmo. Some say it was Omer Rav Chisda Omer Ziri Hakom Moedim. Everyone agrees. Biben Teisha Shalom Yom Echad. If you have a boy who's already 9 years old, that should be also bia. That his bia takas a bia, and therefore he can passel her. Pachas Biben Shmeina Shen Biaso bia. However, if he's less than, so again, if he's more than 9 years old, if he's 9 years old, it's a bia. If he's less than 8 years old, then even though if he had bia with her, doesn't have a shame bia, and therefore she's still kosher to kuna. L'nechel el biben shmoina. Someone who is in their 8th year. In other words, they are at least 8, but they're not yet 9. The Beis Shammai savi gamrina medoros harishayim. Beis Hillel savi lo gamrina medoros harishayim. Do we look at the previous generations? Previous generations were able to be moiled even at a younger age, at 8 years old. And therefore, as then, so too over here, it'll be enough to passel her. But Daras Rishayim and Owen, the Oilid, how do we know, Taka, that even Daras Rishayim, that it's Shaykh, that you can give birth at such a young age? So Eliam, when the Pasuk says, Chavolozois bas Shela bas Aliyam Eishes Uriah Hachitim, that with regard to Basheva, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah Hachiti, now David HaMelech had a wife by the name of Basheva. So this is referring to David HaMelech's wife. It says Eishes Uriah Hachiti, but of course Uriah Hachiti was one of the front lines. He was killed, and Basheva married him, and then David married her. Ksiv Eliam ben Achitophel Hagiloini. So it mentions Eliam ben Achitophel. Now Viksiv, then it also says V'yishlach biad Nasan Hanavi. He was sent in front of Nasan the prophet. V'yikra Shemai Yedidya, and his name was Yedidya. This is referring to Shlomo. Ba'avor ki Hashem ohavoi, because Hashem loved him. Ksiv, and furthermore it says V'hi l'shanatayim yomim, after 2 years, you geizizim l'Avshalom, they were shearing wool for Avshalom. B'ksiv Avshalom barach, he ran away. V'yel kashurav v'hisham shalosh shanim, and he was there for 3 years. So he had 2 years, and then he was geizes him for Avshalom. Then 3 years later, B'ksiv Yoshev Avshalom Yerushalayim shenatayim yomim, that Avshalom was in Yerushalayim for 2 years. So he had 3, 2, 2. Ufnei hamelech lo ra, and the king didn't see him. After 40 years, I'm going to go to Shalom es Nidara and fulfill my promise. Which is the beginning of the rebellion. So Achitophel saw that it was not going to be in his favor. He settles his own dung. He basically gave his last will and testament to his family. And he killed himself. Anshe domim, treacherous men, umirmo yachsu mehem, will not even live half of their lives. So Tanya Koshanas of Shol Doyeg, all the days of Doyeg, who was an advisor to Shaul, who did some bad things, by the way. Einon el shloishim ve'arba. Doeg lived 34. V'shel Achitophel einon el shloishim v'shalish. Achitophel died at the age of 33. So, Kama Havilahu, Tlos and the Tlos. So we're talking about Achitophel. Now we have to go backwards, all these psukim. Achitophel died at 33 years old. Dal Sheva, you can remove 7 to Havi Shloimoi. Remove 7 for the age of Shlomo. Pashalu Eser Meshis, which means that when Shlomo was born, Achitophel was 26 years old. So Dal Tarti, you have to remove 2 more years. Latlase Bure, there's 3 pregnancies, so therefore you have to assume 2 years went by for those 3 pregnancies, like 8 months each. Ishtakach D'chol Chad V'chad B'tamni Oyud. So basically, again, Shlomo was 7 when Achitophel died. So when Shlomo, when he was born, Achitophel was 26. Now we have Achitophel, and then you have Eliam, and then you have Bathsheba, who gave birth to Shlomo. Now, how is it possible that if Achitophel was 26 when Shlomo was born, and we have to subtract 2 years for the pregnancies, that's 24, which means that Shlomo to Bathsheba would, and that's one generation. Bathsheba to Eliam is another generation. And then Eliam to Achitophel is another generation. That's 24 years divided by 3 is 8. So we see that each of them gave birth at 8 years old. So that's how we're potentially interpreting, again, that Doris Rishonim, they're able to give birth at such a young age. Again, Ibor Ashkach to Chol Chad V'chad, but Tamni Oyud, each of them they were 8 years old. So when Achitophel was 8, Eliam was born, and when Eliam was 8, Bathsheba was born, and then and then maybe an extra year, and then Bathsheba was also very young when Shlomo was born. Maybe it was really 9. Bathsheba Alida B'shis. How do we know that it's 9, that's 888? Maybe it's 9, 9, and 6. Mishum the Issa Saberia, because a woman matures earlier. How do we know that this proves the status of a boy, that he can be a father a child at the age of 8 in Doris Rishonim? Maybe not. Maybe they could only produce at 9, because 9 is no shail. Everyone holds that 9 years old, biyasabiyah. The question is, how about at 8? So we're trying to bring this raya, but maybe not, because Bathsheba was a woman. Maybe she was only 6. And the other 2 generations of Achitophel and Eliam, there were 9. So it's not necessarily a proof. Teda. And I'll prove to you that maybe we should look at women in this way. Interestingly, Bathsheba actually had 2 children before this. Which, how do we fathom that? But that's what it says. So we can't rule it out from here, because one of them is a woman. So therefore she could have given birth younger, and therefore the other ones could have given birth at an older age. These are the children of Terach. Terach es Avram, es Nachor, es Haran. So Terach had 3 kids: Avram, Nachor, and Haran. But Avraham Gadoyel ben Nachor. So he grew up in Nachor Shana for a year. V'Nachor Gadol miHaran Shana. Nimsa Avram Gadol Shtei Shana b'Haran. So he actually lived there for two years. V'Ksiv v'Yikach Avram v'Nachor lehem Noshim. They got married. Rabbi Yitzchak Yiska Zu Sarah. So this is Haran's daughter was Sarah. So why was Sarah Manu also called Yiske? Because she used to speak in Ruach HaKodesh. She listened to her voice because she's Yiske, someone who is like a Navi, prophetess. That everyone gazed at her beauty. He fell on his face. She was like laughing. So how much older was Avraham than Sarah? We know this. It was Eser Shanin. It was not 10 years, because when Avraham gave birth to Yitzchak, Avraham was 100 and Sarah was 90. So it was a 10-year gap between Avraham and Sarah. The Kashish Miavua Tartin Shnin, and she was by her father Haran 2 years. Ashkach ki oilida Haran l'Sarah, must be that when Haran gave birth to Sarah, b'tamni oilida, it was at 8. So again, Avraham was 100, Sarah was 90. Haran, who is Avraham's brother, was 2 years younger than Avraham. So if that's the case, if Avraham was 10 years old and Haran was her father, and Haran was younger than Avraham, so it must be that Haran was 8 years old. So Haran fathered Sarah at the age of 8. So that's how we're going to learn this out. Again, because Avraham and Haran were brothers, and Avraham was older than Haran by 2 years. And we also know, and Haran's daughter was Sarah. Avraham married Sarah. Avraham and Sarah are 10 years apart, which must mean that Haran gave birth to Sarah at age 8. How do we know that Avraham was the oldest of the 3 brothers? Maybe he was younger than Haran. Even though it mentions Avraham first, maybe just because he was the wisest of the 3. I'll tell you that this is proof that when Noach was 500 years old, we know that at 500 years old, Noach had these kids, Shem, Cham, and Yafes. Shem hagadol b'Cham, Shana. Shem was a year older than his brother Cham. B'Cham gadol m'Yafes Shana. So they were all basically 1 year apart. Nimsa, Shem gadol m'Yafes Shtei Shanim. So again, obviously, if Shem is older than Cham by a year, Cham is older than Yafes by a year, then Shem is 2 years older than Cham. Noach ben Sheish Shana, when Noach was 600 years old, there was this flood. So the Mabul started at 600, which means, so basically, that would mean that Shem was 100 years old. The Ksiv Elo told the Shem ben Mea Shana, he was 100 years old, which makes sense. That's our Pakshad. So he gave birth to our Pakshad, 100, which is basically at the time of the Mabul. But it says over here, Shnatayim Achar Mabul. It was actually 2 years after the Mabul. So therefore, Ben Mea Shana Bar Mea B'Tartin Shtin Habi. I understand, that calculation doesn't make sense. If Noach was 500 when Shem was born, and if that's the case, and we know that Noach was 600 when the flood came, which that would make Shem 100 years old. But it says that he gave birth to our Paksha 2 years after the Mabul. So what do you mean that would be 100 plus 2? It would be 102. So we're saying that's really B'der Chachma. So Shem was actually the youngest, which means Shem was really only 98. Shem was 98 at the time of the Mabul. And therefore, he gave birth to our Paksha 2 years later, who's 100. So the whole raya by Noach is just again to show that even though it says Shem, Cham, and Yafes, that doesn't mean that Shem was the oldest. So too, when it says Avram, Nachor, and Haran, it doesn't mean Avram was the oldest. It was just that they were the smartest of the 3. Amar Kahana Marisa Lushmaisa Kameda Rab Zvid Menarda. Armali said, Atom Mahachamas Nisan. You learn out from there, but none Mahachamas Nisan law. You learn it out possibly from Avram and Sarah, but we can learn it from here. L'shem Yoyelid Gam Hu Avi, that he also gave birth. Kol b'nei Aver Achi Yefes Hagadol, and it says clearly Yefes Hagadol. Yefes Hagadol Shbe'achav Havi. So you want to learn out from Noach. It says beferish that Yefes was older, so you can figure it out because of 100 versus 102. That's true, but we also just see the pasuk clearly says the Achi Yefes Hagadol. It says beferish that he was the oldest. So therefore, even though Shem's name was mentioned first, that doesn't mean that he was the oldest. It just means he was the wisest. Hagadol Shebachav Havi. So El Minolan. So how do we know about the 8 years old? Because again, maybe it's not true. Maybe we don't learn out from Avraham Avinu, because maybe Avraham Avinu was really the youngest, not the oldest, and therefore Avraham, in relation to Haran could actually have been 2 years older, and therefore when Sarah, even though Avraham and Sarah were 10 years apart, but that doesn't mean that Haran was 8 when Sarah was born. Maybe Haran was 10, right? Elam and Nolan, Mahacha Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur Mati Yehuda. So you have Betzalel, whose father was Uri, whose father was Hur. V'ksiv v'Tomas Azuva, that Azuva died, who was Ashes Kalev, the wife of Kalev. So Kalev and Azuva were married. Now, it's actually Betzalel, the father of Betzalel was Uri, the father of Uri was Hur, and the father of Hur is Kalev, who's married to Azuva, who died. V'yitachel Kalev es Ephras, so he took Ephras, the Tedlo es Hur. So again, we see clear that Kalev gave birth to Hur. V'chi avad Betzalel Mishkan bar Kamahavi bar Tleyaser. Actually, when we find that Betzalel built the Mishkan, he was only 13 years old. Ish b'malachto asher hem oisim. So it's coming to tell that he was mamash, just became an ish, just became a man. So actually, Betzalel was 13 years old. Betanya shanari shayna Moshe Mishkan. First year, Moshe built the Mishkan. Shniya first year he made the Mishkan. Second year, Shniya hekim a Mishkan. He erected it. The Shalach Meraglim, he also sent spies. Ksiv ben arboim shana noichi b'shalach Moshe Eben Hashem. So v'goymer. So he makes the statement, Kalev does, that I was 40 years old when this was sent out, when the Meraglim were sent out. V'ata now hini noichi hayoim ben chamesh u'shmoinim shana. Now I am chamesh u'shmoinim, 85 years old. So kami havilhu arboim. So again, it's clearly saying that Kalev was 40 years old in the Midbar. Dala Beisar Dahavi Betzalel. You need to subtract 14, because Betzalel was 13 when he made the Mishkan, and then plus 1 for the Meraglim, which means that Kalev was 26 years old when Betzalel was born, right? Because that's what we're saying. Kalev was 40, and you have Betzalel, who was his great-grandson. Now, Betzalel built the Mishkan at 13, and it says the next year was the Meraglim, which means Betzalel was 14, and his great-grandfather, Kalev, was 40. So how's that possible? There's only a 26-year gap between Kalev, who had a son Hur, who had a son Uri, who had a son Betzalel. So Pashlu Esther Mishis, there's 26 years left, because again you have 40 minus the 14-year-old Betzalel. So 40-year-old Kalev and the 14-year-old great-grandson Betzalel. Pashlu, so what happens? So Dal are based on the Hava Betzalel. Pashlu Esther Mishis, you have 26 years old. 26 between. Dal Tarti Shni the Tola Ibur Eshtkach the Chol Chad V'Chad B'Tamni Oilid. So the fact is, there's 3 generations, and there's a 26-year gap between being 40 and being 14 between Kalev and Betzalel. So how is it possible that you have 26 years? So 2 of the years is deducted because of pregnancy. There's 24 years of 3 generations. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So therefore we see, Taka, this notion that the Doris Rishonim were able to father kids at 3. So according to the Beis Shammai, he says that we learn out from the Doros Rishonim that just like Doros Rishonim, it's considered to be a being that can actually have children. So too over here we say the same thing. So in this, the Chedush Haran asks, but today an 8-year-old can't father a child. So it's true. But since it used to be able to have children at 8, so it's considered to be a Maisa Bia at 8 years old. Okay, we'll stop there. Let's look at question 14. Me'eza Gil, at what age Bias Hakatan Bia L'Kuli Alma, so he said once a child is Tisha Shanim V'Yomecha, when she's 9 years old. Be'eza Gil L'Kuli Alma Ein Bias Bia, and that's Pachas Ben Shmoina. And Be'eza Gil Pluktahi, that's from the age of 8 up until their 9th birthday. Question TA 18. Ben Kama Hoyabat Salil Kaisas a Mishkan. How old was he when he made the Mishkan? So that we see Befarishing, he was 13, or you can maybe say 14. Right, he was actually 13, and then the next year, the Meraglim was a year later with 14. Uben Kama Haya Kolev Kishanayalid Betzalel. How old was Kolev when Betzalel was born? And that we clearly see was at the age of 40. So that's TA 18. And because of this whole drasha, we see again that a person is able to produce and have a child at the age of 8. Question TB 19. Me'ezagil bias katan biel kuliyama. Okay, so this is what I wrote. Betesh shanim yomecha bias katan biel kuliyama. Ches shanim o pachais ein bia so bia. Hamachlokas meches shanim v'yomechad I loimdim midaris harishonim. Adkan.